Good morning, everybody. Hey, we got core PCE price index coming up here. Very important number for the treasuries. Treasuries already up above 2% yield on the 10-year treasury. I'm going to get straight into it. I'm a little bit behind today. I don't know why. I don't feel like I spent too much time getting ready, but you know what? Sometimes when I start ruminating about things, I go slower and I don't even realize what I'm doing. Morning, Octavius, FTH, Keller. Good morning. Hey, I haven't seen you in a few days, Keller. How's it going? Well, we just look at the charts here really quick. We had a really huge short covering rally yesterday in the ES. At least the data from the options and so forth shows us that this was largely short covering driven. That could mean that we come back a little bit, although I also kind of suspect that the market's kind of overpriced this. Like we probably went too far. That's just the way that things tend to go, right? Over here in the treasuries, you can see, man, like the volatility in the treasury is just absolutely insane. And here, pretty big move down here. I should have just taken a long in the micros and just held it, huh? Well, and here you got oil. Oil coming off of its highest levels, but I think there's still some potential for it to spike here at points. Gold and silver. Goldman Sachs still thinks that gold and silver looks good and that gold could get to $2,300. But for now, kind of coming back. And copper's still within its range. Kind of interesting. And then we get over here in the currencies. So there was a story on Bloomberg that Russian oligarchs could use Bitcoin to escape sanctions. And as soon as that article hit the market, you started to see this huge spike in Bitcoin. So it's kind of a bum deal, I think. I that's not the reason I would like Bitcoin to be moving up, but whatever. And here's the dollar. The dollar's still hovering around 97. So still at a somewhat elevated level, although it did come back quite significantly yesterday. So that's where we're at. I've got an awesome position in the treasury. Oh, and you got the one at 126. Okay, well, I did roll yesterday. So I had to roll my contracts, and then I worked out a position, and it worked out really well somehow. In fact, it worked out almost perfectly. They went to my orders like to the I don't know. It was a little scary. It was a little scary, to be honest with you. Oh, we need to come over here. Okay, so here we go. We got about a minute left. You say a good reason? I think probably not. It might be a good reason for the Federal Reserve to not do a 50 basis point hike. And I am of the opinion that it's not very compelling right now. I don't think that doing a 50 basis point hike is really solves the problems per se. It's really going to be hike after hike after hike, on a consistent basis is what we need to cool things off. But well, let's see what this PCE is. We're looking for a reading month over month of spot 5. By the way, again, the year over year number doesn't really tell you very much, but the Federal Reserve uses that, so we do want to pay attention to what it is. Okay, well, core durable goods was at spot 7 versus spot 4, so that's good. And who's the crazy one with the 2,000 lot there? Okay, so it looks like they're coming in line. PCE price index year over year was 6.1 versus an expected 6%. But the month over month core number was spot 5 versus an expected spot 5. That might, well, they are reacting a little bit bearishly to it at the first here. Somebody decided to hit that guy at 31.5, though. That's probably part of why it moved the way that it did there. Was, hitting it and then slamming through it. They could come right back to it. Yeah. Well, given the numbers and given what just happened there, it wouldn't surprise me to see a liquidity hole form at 31.5 and see price get stuck there. So that doesn't do much for us in terms of if we want to take a trade. And since we're above 2%, which is kind of like the key number, I don't know if trying to take a long here really makes sense. Now I am a little, so I think that the next thing we got up here, we do get some consumer confidence numbers later today, don't we? Let's come back to Forex Factory. Yes, there is University of Michigan consumer sentiment and inflation expectations, and then also pending home sales. And we get a Fed monetary policy report at some time today as well. They would do a 50 for the whole year. Nah, I think that they're just gonna do the next 4 meetings. There will be a quarter basis point hike. Is what I think is gonna happen, unless the economy runs into a recession. But I'm also wondering if we go into a recession that they don't really pull rates back much. What was this about? Um, no, I don't think that he was announcing it. Supposedly, Biden has chosen his Supreme Court nominee, but I don't think we're going to hear about it until like Monday. Oh, he will name it on Friday afternoon. Whoa, 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 whoa. Why? You gonna name the? Well, actually, Friday release kind of has an interesting effect on things. Usually, you put a Friday release like after business on Friday when you don't want anybody to hear about it, you know? But if it's a really big piece of news, it can actually be good to put it out on Friday because it kind of mulls all weekend, and then you get all sorts of news stories on Monday, and it can dominate the next news cycle. So I'm wondering if that's perhaps what Joe Biden is trying to do. I have to say, so on the Ukraine thing yesterday, you know, the world is absolutely stunned by this Ukraine thing. Um, it seems like we're having these kinds of events more and more where like one thing just like captures the whole world's attention. Seems like it's happening more and more, but I mean, this has really captured the world's attention. And I have to say, I am not very happy with the way that things are going. And I don't think that most of the world is either. I think that people are extremely upset that this is happening to Ukraine. I mean, this is like tanks running through suburbs, and the world's not doing a darn thing about it. Um, so we're all watching, and so then Biden comes up with his big press conference. This is the moment for Joe Biden to like show what he's got and rally the country and all of this. And I think he bombed, man. I think his speech was uninspiring, and the result of the actions that came about as a result of you know their response, I think, was a little weak. The sanctions were weaker than what members of Congress were saying. They left key industries out of, especially oil. So the it was like the Germans came in and said, "No, you can't sanction the oil because we still need the oil." I just what's gonna stop Vladimir Putin from doing this to Moldova now once they're done? What's gonna that's what's gonna happen, man. He's gonna take Moldova next. People are upset because the people will have to take the burden for the wall. Inflation stays forever. Well, it is interesting to think about. Does this mean that inflation will be more or less transitory? I'm not so sure. The thing is inflation that we've been seeing from the supply chains and everything is very different from, say, um, energy-driven inflation. Energy-driven inflation is a really big, difficult problem to deal with as well, you know? Mm. Let's see here. Fed Up Cassandra, who is Francis Coppola, says, agree the EU's response is disappointing, but SWIFT really isn't the ultimate weapon you think it is. The U.S. actions to block Russian banks from dollar clearing is way more draconian. SWIFT can be bypassed, dollar clearing can't yet. I do agree. Cutting Russia off from SWIFT is kind of more of a formality. I'm not sure why the Germans don't want it to happen yet, but it might be something that happens down the line and won't actually be a big deal when it happens. We'll see. Anyways, and it's funny how the US is like, well, we can ramp up the sanctions even more. It's like they saved something in the tank because apparently invading Ukraine is not like the final crossing of the line that should really cut Russia off from the rest of the world completely, which is just like, what? They say people are all well to do with loads of saving. Well, people are spending a lot. I don't know if I haven't seen the spending slow down. I think that we probably will see. I think that we probably will see spending slow at some point, but as of yet, when you go and you look at almost every metric, imports, like consumer spending, all of these numbers, people are spending more today than they did before the pandemic. Ukraine is not a NATO country. Why? Then why interfere? Because they're attacking a free country, man. Or I'm sorry, but if this NATO doesn't prevent that sort of thing from happening, then what is the freaking point? Like, the thing that makes me mad is that I feel I'm not a foreign policy expert, so my opinion on this doesn't really necessarily matter. It's I'm not necessarily going to be good at predicting what's going to happen or what's a good strategy. It seems to me that you just had to say something. You just had to say, well, listen, if you do something in Ukraine, we will respond. And we've given Ukraine security assurances or something like that, and then Putin wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, call his bluff. I've done a lot. Listen. All I sit here and do is read news all day, guys. Okay, I fully understand that Putin is saying, "Oh, if you do anything, I'll shoot nukes at you." Okay, but the reason that he's able to do that is because you ceded the ground to begin with, right? Think about this. What if the situation was reversed and they said, if you enter into Ukraine, we'll shoot nukes at you? Do you think that he would have still done it? Maybe he would have still done it thinking that you're not actually going to do it. The civil war going on since 2014, I'm well aware of that as well, but that is basically been Russia meddling in over there. And look, you can go and you can, if the people, because I understand that those areas have more Russians in them, and if they really want to break off, that's fine. You don't have to attack the whole country. To be frank, I'm already, listen. Oh, it's Caleb. Listen. What you're saying about this subject, you have absolutely zero credibility with me on this issue because you have been pressing Russian propaganda from day one. You were one of the people that said that there was absolutely no way that Russia would move in. And if you were one of the people that was like, nah, Russia, the U.S. is full of shit. The intelligence agencies are lying to us and trying to bait a war. If you were one of those people, you should just shut the fuck up. I am so serious here, man. There has been so much nonsense about this online, and there was so much deception and people just absolutely being completely misled by the Russians here on this issue. And then you would think that when the thing actually happens and they're proven completely wrong on everything, that they would shut the fuck up. They would realize, oh, I'm a Russian pawn. I should rethink my worldview. No. They get louder. And they try and double down on this, like that it's okay. Like that it's okay. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And then the Ukrainians in the East have been asking for Russian intervention since 2014. Yeah, because listen, dude, that is not what's going on. Okay, here, let me tell you what's going on over there. Okay. The Russians sent militias into those areas to cause problems. The Russians have been creating this situation specifically so that they could try and have an excuse to come in and take over all of Ukraine at some point. And you know how you can know that that's really the case? Because they invaded all of Ukraine. Because if it was just about those two areas that were separating off, you would occupy those two areas. You'd say these are independent countries now, and that would be the end of it. Ukraine wouldn't do anything. But no, you're attacking the whole country. You're trying to kill the president. It's bullshit, dude. And you know what happens next? They take Moldova. You know it. Everybody knows it now, right? What's going to stop him from doing it? Once he has Ukraine, the next non-NATO country that's there is Moldova. It's going to happen. I'm sorry, but there is absolutely no excuse for what Russia is doing here. And we could have prevented it. That much I'm sure of. What the right way to do it was, I don't know. I don't think, just to be honest here, first, if Donald Trump was president, it would be a little scary. Okay, so I'm not saying that I wish that Donald Trump was president right now, but I do think that if Donald Trump was president, I think that he would have thought twice about going into Ukraine. I really do. Oh, now you're using whataboutisms. What about ism Middle East countries being attacked? The fact of the matter is that is that we're having a ground war in Europe. We're having a ground war in Europe. For why? Seriously. The coup we pushed in 2014. Listen, this president is widely supported. Okay, the people of Ukraine want to be their own nation. Okay, this idea that the Russians are doing them a favor is absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. I don't give a shit about. Listen, there's always a ground war in the Middle East. and frankly, the ground wars in the Middle East is usually civil wars, right? This is a major world power attacking a civilized nation. Taiwan is next for China. I mean, I don't think that China's going to do that anytime soon, but I have a really hard time seeing how you stop them now. The pattern has already been established. Well, if you do anything, we'll shoot nukes at you. Oh, okay, you do whatever you want. I think that again, that it doesn't matter. If the Ukrainian government is attacking people in eastern Ukraine because it's their territory, okay? They're trying to keep law and order in their country because Russian militias are pushing into their country and starting shit, and they push back against it. And then all of a sudden that justifies blowing up the whole country? Are you fucking kidding me, dude? Get a grip, man. You are so far. You have been reading the Russian propaganda for so long. Your entire perspective about what's going on here has been morphed beyond comprehension. How in any situation does that make what's going on okay? Seriously. You wanted a sleepy job in the office. I've been egging. The truth is that for the past week I've been egging to have this fight. Because remember, do you guys remember where we were at a few days ago? Let's just go back to where we were at a few days ago. The United States says that Russia is going to attack Ukraine within 48 hours. And everybody said, well, that would be crazy. There's no way that the Russians are going to do that. This is all Western propaganda. The West is egging for a fight. They're trying to start a conflict. That's what they told us. And I said, well, maybe the CIA has a good reason to think that there's going to be an attack, but maybe they're wrong. That's happened a lot. The intelligence agencies are wrong. Maybe they really are just trying to deceive us. Maybe Biden is trying to make something happen because he thinks that it will be good for his presidency. Maybe we don't know. Let's just wait. 48 hours isn't very long to wait. We waited 48, the time came and went and it didn't happen. So then we said, well, maybe they were wrong. And all of the people that were the Russians were like, see, look, the US, they can't be trusted, yada, 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 yada. And then we find out, what do we find out? That the intelligence was correct, that they were planning on attacking. Because the United States said something, they delayed their plans, but only by a brief moment. And really what it ended up doing is that's the thing, is that the Russians wanted to come in. The Russians wanted to say, look, we're doing a peacekeeping mission, yada, 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 yada. But because the United States called them out on it, they weren't able to really pull off that plot, right? Like, you remember, like, when the first date when the U.S. said it was going to happen, Russia was doing all this stuff. They were like, look, there was a car bomb and there was this thing. And the Russian propaganda was showing us, like, the explosive devices and everything. It looks like the Russian soldiers that were there just like taped something together to try and make it look like there was like no effort put into it at all. Like it was an obvious fabrication. And the video had been recorded on the day that they were going to attack. And then they released it like, a few days later when they actually started. Okay. So it's like, it was obvious that this was all a pretext for Russia to come in, because really they just wanted to take over Ukraine. And the reality of the situation is that situation in eastern Ukraine would not exist without Russia. Russia has been sending people there. They have been encouraging militias to go, and they've been basically taking their military people, telling the military people to go and start a militia and then go over there. That situation was created by Russia, so that they would have a justification to enter the country, right? And where were we at? Well, maybe the U.S. intelligence is right or wrong. Who knows, right? And then it comes out they were right on absolutely everything. They were right on absolutely everything. So, at this point, we had all of these people that were arguing something. Everybody's saying it's the West, just warmongering, etc., etc., etc. When do those people say we were wrong? Where did they say that? Huh? Nah, they're just trying to push the same bullshit excuses that the Russians were using to manipulate them in the first place. You should realize at some point, like, oh, the worldview and the knowledge that I had been given was absolute bullshit. And what's happening now instead? I tell you what's happening now instead. These people on the right, and they are on the right, and I hate to say it because, listen, I'm a Republican, and I am on the side of protecting individual rights and liberty, right? And I want government that's closer to the people, more local government and smaller government and less government spending overall in general, okay? But there's the people on my side of the aisle right now that are just being absolutely bad, just so stupid. Just so stupid. Tucker Carlson, shut the fuck up, dude. You are screwing up everything. Donald Trump, shut the fuck up, man. Like, of course, the media is warping what he said, but he was praising Putin. It wasn't praising Putin. He was saying, well, Putin is pretty tactically devious here, and he pulled it off pretty well, and Biden's outmatched. That's what he was trying to say, but the media has morphed it into he loves Putin and he's praising him. Okay, but you know what? It's not helpful. Even if it's a morph of what he's saying. Here's what could have happened. You could have just said nothing. You could have just said nothing, and then we wouldn't have the problem, right? You're gonna give, like, can you imagine if because of this, The Democrats escape a slaughter in the midterms and in the next presidential election because the Republicans said stupid shit, because that's happened so many times before, right? So here's what I say. Pull your heads out of Russia's ass and understand what's really going on here. That so Russians started the elections in the East? I mean, how can you say that they did, that they didn't? I mean, come on. They have their hands, they're meddling in practically everything that's going on over there. Let's bring back, well, we can't, like, listen. If you think that if you really think that go return to the gold standard is a realistic thing, then we need to work on your economics, brother. We need to work on your economics, because the world economy cannot function on the gold. Like, the world economy is too big for the gold standard to work now. They wouldn't be able to fund things. Why? Okay. I think I should eat if I'm going to get into how debt works. But if you want to buy a company, for instance, right? How do we do that? Well, we use debt. Banks print money. They create debt. And that's how they pull off these large transactions. If you want to pull off a transaction the size of, the kinds that they typically do in corporate banking these days, and you had to back it all with gold, wouldn't work. Like, the gold standard worked 100 years ago because the economies were a fraction of the size they are today. It literally would not be practical. And like, here's the thing. Why? I just told you why. Companies wouldn't be able to fund transactions. You wouldn't be able to do anything. Here's what you got to understand. We didn't just went, like, okay. You think this is what I think you believe. One day, the evil globalists decided, well, we want to increase our power and be rich, so let's just end the gold standard. And then we can take all of the money from all of the stupid rubes and we can rule the world. Okay? That's not how it went down. The reason that the gold standard went away was because it wasn't working. It wasn't working. We couldn't do stuff. It was like we kind of had this pseudo gold standard. And we had already built the economy up so large that we couldn't back it all with gold. And then the French were like, okay, go and transfer your dollars for gold. And then we said, oh, well, that's not going to work. And so we had to get off of it. Like, it happened. The gold standard basically collapsed on itself. That's why it happened. Listen, you know why there's not a large country in the world running on the gold standard? Because everybody that's in economics knows that it's a dumb idea. Yeah, gold is finite and people are not. Therefore, demand for gold would be finite, infinite, if it were money. It did, though. I don't, this is one that always perplexes me. It's so tough, because I find politics today so tough, because on one hand, I want to have, I think that individual rights should be placed above all else. That's what America is about. It's the elevation of individual rights and liberty above all other considerations. That's what America is about. And I still believe that. Democrats don't believe that, man. Democrats are like doing crazy shit. Are doing crazy shit. All right? So then I come over here on the right, and all of my buddies on the right believe all of this shit about economics that is just like absolute crazy talk. So it's like, how do you come in? Every respectable economic and banking person and like the whole industry is telling you like, well, there's a reason why we got off the gold standard. It's because a debt based economy allows us to be bigger and all of these sorts of things. And then how can you have the audacity to say that literally every person in this extremely complicated industry is wrong and you're right? We should move back to the gold standard. Like I, I just can't imagine having that level of arrogance and cluelessness at the same time. I just can't even wrap my head around it. That you can sense that literally every reputable person on this subject says this is a bad idea, and you still want to do it. Like, what? Are you kidding me, man? Are you kidding me, man? There you go. Debt based fractional reserve banking accommodates humanity's infinite demand for money. It does. Like, here's the thing: the Federal Reserve System works really, really well, but there's a problem. There is a problem. The problem is that there is kind of a tendency or even an incentive, I would say, for Congress to want to spend too much money. That's the problem that we're in today. That's the real problem. You don't need to get rid of the gold standard. What you need to do is you need a constitutional amendment that says that the budget must be balanced. That's what should really happen. Lots of states have done this, have tackled this problem successfully, and they're very financially successful. In Utah, we've done that, and we've been very successful with it in Utah. You can't print till it pleases you. There needs to be limits on it. Right now, there's no legal limit on it. That's a problem. Okay, but you can't use gold. It won't work with gold. Yeah. Yeah. The problem isn't that we can print too much. The problem is that we do. I mean, I don't know if we've printed too much per se. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I don't think that you come down and you say there's a level, and once the debt to GDP crosses this threshold, then we have a problem. That's what I think. How people kind of try and approach it. It seems to me that it doesn't work that way. It's a little bit more complicated. But I think that the problem is that there are societal costs to printing too much. We've seen those societal costs over the past 10 years. And the thing that we're not doing right now is we're not at the beginning of this sitting down and looking at it and saying, are the long term costs of taking on this much debt worth it for this particular situation? You know? Because if it's like, well, the country is going to be dead because of a war or whatever if we don't take on the debt, then yeah, I think it would be worth it, right? But like in the case of like COVID, for instance, uh, some spending, yeah, but what they did was just absolutely crazy. We're going to be paying for it for the rest of our lives. It's going to suck. Politicians promising, yeah. Well, and the other issue is that, especially with this COVID thing, it really has turned into like politicians trying to bribe taxpayers with their own money, hasn't it? I mean, like it worked. It worked for Donald Trump, and so Biden was the first thing that he did when he came in is like, well, I need to bribe them too. It was ridiculous when it wasn't needed. Like it really wasn't needed. You look at the stock market; they didn't need to do that. That other stimulus. It's pretty crazy. I have oatmeal I should eat. Hold on. Okay, I'm getting a headline here. Biden to name Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. Here's what we know about her. I'll bring it over. She's a lovely looking lady. President Joe Biden is nominating U.S. Circuit Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court, multiple outlets reported Friday, making the first black woman ever nominated to the High Court and kicking off a likely swift Senate battle to confirm the president's first Supreme Court pick, while Democrats still have Senate control. I would not speak so quickly on that because Manchin has kind of said that he doesn't favor putting a Supreme Court pick in before the midterms, but we'll see what happens. Maybe he decides that he just really likes her. And a hyphenated name, I know, right? Well, listen, here was the problem that I have with the whole with what Biden did on this is I'm actually 100% okay saying it would be really cool to have a black female Supreme Court justice that's never happened before. So let's go and find one and put them into the. I'm personally, listen, I'm a lot more liberal on these sorts of things than I probably should be, considering my my larger political leanings. But I'm totally okay with that. Okay, what I'm not okay with is saying we need to put a black woman on the Supreme Court because her life experience will lead to better decisions. That's a problem. That's a problem because now all of a sudden, what are we doing? We're making decisions in the Supreme Court based on what we want to have happen and not based on the Constitution and law. That's where I have a problem. I don't want to put somebody in there. You want to put that person in there because you not because you think that they will follow the law and the Constitution, but because you think they'll make the decisions that you want because of their lived experience. You know what I mean? That's what I have a problem with. But hey, let's see what her background is. Let's see, is she like an activist judge? Well, let's see. Because if she's just a good, qualified, well law-based judge, then I'm totally fine with it. She serves on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit after Biden she has only been, before that she served as a federal district judge in Washington, D.C. Okay. Among Jackson's most notable rulings on the federal bench was in 2019, she ordered Trump-era White House counsel Don McGahn to testify before the House Judiciary Committee as part of its investigation into Russian election interference, declaring in her ruling presidents are not kings. Okay, well, she's definitely a left-leaning judge, but I don't know if that kind of tells me the sorts of things that I want to know. 3 Republican senators, Collins, Murkowski, and Lindsey Graham, voted to confirm her to the D.C. Court of Appeals, though none have so far declared that they would support her Supreme Court bid. Okay. Now we gotta learn more about this lady. I'm sure that the right wingers blogs will all have great reasons to dislike her. I want to know what they're going to be. Actually, let's just go to Hot Air. Let's see what Hot Air says. They're usually really good at this sort of stuff. We're gonna have to go full on right wing here, maybe to find stuff. No, it might take a few hours. They're gonna have to scramble and go and dig onto all of her decisions. We'll see. I would like to know what her decisions are. I mean, I'm expecting a leftist. Listen, Ruth was a leftist, right? So that's not a problem. What concerns me is judges that are not making decisions based on law and the Constitution, right? That's what bothers me. I'm okay if you're a leftist and you have a leftist interpretation of it, but like, man, there are some judges on the courts of appeals that are just straight up activist judges, right? They make their decisions based on their political leanings and not based on what the law says. It's crazy. Yeah, here's my question. Why should it be that way? Just because the majority of us got out of some morally reprehensible stuff doesn't mean it won't get us back into other morally ones. No, what was a majority rules gets really annoying when the majority is stupid. The American institution of slavery didn't exist for nothing. It existed when it did because the majority supported its legality. There you go. That was like a really good. That's a really good example, Uzi. Bravo. That was quite scholarly. Listen, here's my question. You are FTH is saying that we should have a fully representative democracy. Why? Why? What's the reason? See, I'm gonna eat some food here, so you got the time. Type it out. What's the reason behind why you think that would be a good thing? Is the U.S. a constitutional republic or a representative? It's a constitutional republic. 100%. Yeah. The unique thing about the United States is not that we elect our leaders. Rome did that. The unique thing about the United States is the elevation of individual rights above all other considerations. It's both. If we had no constitution, it wouldn't be a constitutional republic. I suppose that it kind of would depend on your definition of representative democracy, right? But I think you can kind of say, I think maybe you can say it's both, yeah. But I think that he's dancing around the issue. What it is or what it was intended to be, notwithstanding, you're making a case for a change. Why do you want that change? Yeah, we certainly elect representatives to democratically vote on issues on behalf of people. That's right. It is without question a constitutional republic. Now, rules for those representatives are encoded in the Constitution. Yeah. It says it's a representative democracy, not active democracy. But yeah, but he said, or is it a representative democracy? Which we're not ancient Greece. Yeah. We're not ancient Greece. We're not Athens. It was kind of funny. I was talking about this on TikTok yesterday because I couldn't help myself, but somebody was talking about what is left versus right. This guy seemed to think that left versus right had to do with whether you were authoritarian or not, which I was like, no, that's not what it is about at all. Left versus right, at least the way that the term originally came about, what had more to do with your approach to change. Leftists think that radical restructuring of society on a regular basis is a good thing, and people on the right prefer law and order and incremental change, right? But the thing that is so curious about the left versus right spectrum is that what is left and right very much depends on what society is right now. So what was very much very leftist ideas back when they were overthrowing monarchies are actually conservative ideas today. But why? Because what is the basis? Where is society at today? That we have a constitution and that we elevate individual freedoms above all else. That's like the orderly and traditional thing in the United States, and therefore it is a right-wing idea. And so to push against that, what is the radical restructuring of society that they want? Well, it turns out that it is, oh, actually, sometimes your individual rights don't matter. Maybe the public good is more important in some instances. And that became the leftist idea. Why? Because that would be the thing that would be changing, right? Didn't used to. Well, no, I think actually the reality is that particularly in the 1800s. So this is where I think it gets really interesting. I wasn't able to get into this in the TikTok, but this is where it gets interesting. Okay, so the idea of left versus right originated in post-revolution France, right? France right after the French Revolution, and they had one assembly that it didn't work very well. So then they had another one, and the people that supported the revolution and wanted more revolution sat on the left, and the people that kind of had supported the monarchy, of course, they were in the government now, so I would assume that they thought that the revolution was a good thing, but they preferred law and order, and they said, we got to be careful about how we did this, and they sat on the right, okay. Well, they didn't really think of it left. I don't think that at the time of the revolution, this left right lexicon thing was really a huge deal. But, a couple decades later, when we were in the 1800s, is when this idea kind of started to come about. Okay. And the people on the right wing have always hated the left right categorization because they say that it pits people against each other and that we want unity. We want to have unity and move together as a society slowly and incrementally. This is the conservative ideas. I'm conservative, right? How do I come in and I approach an issue? I say, well, if we have a problem, we need to look at the problem. We need to study, and maybe there can be some math involved in it to find out what would be an effective system that can solve this problem. And what is the leftist way of dealing with this issue? We should have a revolution and eat the rich, right? You see the difference here? Okay. So the people on the left, they loved the right-left categorization because they kind of can pit themselves as the good guys that are trying to change things for the better, right? But so they didn't really like it, but it stuck, and so people kind of tried to morph it to their own ends. And so this is where then communism comes into play, right? Because then the thing that emerged on the far left was communism. And what the people were able to do on the right quite effectively, and I think that there's kind of an abuse of the categorization, was that they were able to change the spectrum into not being about whether your approach to change, but what you thought about socialism is what it turned into, right? Because at the time, the leftist idea was socialism. But here's the thing. There's nothing inherently socialist, or there's not anything inherently leftist about socialism. I know that for some of you that might be like a really heretical statement. But again, think about it. If you lived in a society where for the last 300 years socialism was the basis of that society and that was the tradition, that would be the right-wing idea because it was the tradition. Look at what's going on in Russia right now. I mean, I don't think he's pushing for like straight out communism again, but it kind of seems like they're trending in that way. But what is he doing? How is he? What is the messaging that he's pushing out in Russia? He is pushing out idealization of the past, and we need all of the Russians to come together and bring. These are right wing ideas. These are right wing ideas, kind of pushing a country more towards socialism. Why? Because because there was communism there for a really long time, for almost 100 years. Right? So socialism in and of itself is not necessarily a left-wing idea. Bolshevism is. Bolshevism is because Bolshevism says we need to have a violent revolution. That's what Bolshevism was, right? Bolshevism is inherently left-wing, but socialism itself is not. But at that point, the categorization becomes kind of useless, isn't it? Because I don't think that whether we should have collectivist policies in some instances is really the issue anymore. I think that almost all Americans will agree with some degree of social programs. For instance, I think you'd be very hard pressed to find very many people outside of libertarians that think it's bad that the US government built the highway system, right? That's a collectivist program of some sort, right? But the issue now has become two things, which is one, the size of government, and two, the battle between individual rights and public safety more recently, right? Are you swing trading? Yeah. So, Randy, what I do in the tenure or what I've been doing is an experiment. The experiment is, hey, maybe Seth should be a commodity trading advisor and run some sort of a hedge fund that is short and long treasuries. And if I'm going to do that sort of a thing, you're not going to scalp, right? I think that scalping is like if you want to take the professional route to scalping, then you learn the programming and you get the co-located, data center and everything, and you make a market making algorithm, right? But if we're not going to take that route, and I don't know if I want to take that route, to be honest with you, anymore, we'll see. I would like to make some of those algorithms. I want to get more into, the machine learning stuff. If I get all of the machine learning stuff all out and down, then maybe we should go and make a market making robot. But I digress. So I started doing the CTA thing. And so the general overall decision that I'm making at this time is that interest rates are going to increase, and so I want to be short treasury. So I always want to be short at least one contract, the treasury, and at some point that might change, and you'll see when it was. And so what I try to do is I try to work out a position as it's moving around. I take on quite a bit of risk at the very beginning, but if we're assuming that it's like $1 million, well, 100,000, let's assume that it's $100,000 portfolio, okay? That's $100,000 portfolio, and I'm swinging, 1%. At one point, we made like a $10,000 or whatever. Like it's not that bad. So we're doing pretty good. But yeah, it ends up being kind of like a swing trade. But I don't think of it as I'm swing trading. I think of it as I'm doing a CTA strategy. Yeah. So when you see, say, two Democrats holding up the Build Back Better plan in the Senate, Manchin and Sienna, remember over a century ago, you had a similar dynamic with abolishing slavery. That's a good point. If majority ruled in America without question, we wouldn't have abolished slavery until the 1960s. Well, if the majority of overall the U.S., then yeah, I think you're probably right. What's today order flow look like? Oh, you know what, Sagar, you said that so long ago, and I kind of just passed over your comment. Um, so if you're just joining us, we had core PCE price index this morning. The news came out. There wasn't a significant change. There was some big trades at around 31.5 that kind of had price stuck for a little bit. But then we started to have a move back up. And I believe that the reason why we might have that move back up is just because of concerns about the Ukraine thing. I would be a little bit weary about a pullback in the S&P 500 here, because this move up was mostly short covering. So the general determination that I'm making at the moment is that it's not worth it for me to trade this market. The liquidity in the 10-year treasury is still a little weak. There's still a lot of geopolitical and headline risk out there. And it's Friday, and Fridays tend to suck for me. So I'm kind of staying out, and we're talking politics. I think slavery is not a majority versus minority problem. It was a moneyed class. Well, but there was moneyed classes that didn't like slavery too. Uh, Policy wise, the majority absolutely supported. I mean, the thing that's crazy about it is that the framers of the Constitution understood that slavery was unconstitutional. That's why they had to write basically, you know, exceptions for it in the Constitution with the like the 3/5 compromise and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty, like people even back then knew it was wrong. But I mean, I think it's very applicable to today though, right? Because don't we have modern slavery? I honestly I feel that there are many people in situations where they're basically living in modern day slavery. It's not like somebody is keeping them on their property and forcing them to do what they want. So it's not quite to that level. It's not to the level where the Constitution can do anything about it, but their standard of living is essentially slaves. We have one class basically taking advantage of the labor of another class. But it's a difficult issue to solve because hey, like you said it, yes, you already said it, right? Like slavery is economically successful. Many ancient civilizations became very powerful and very successful on slavery. And so, yeah, you come into today, it is kind of economically beneficial to all of us that some people are working for nada, because the reality is, well, I guess I don't know this for sure, but I suspect that the reality is that if everybody was paid fairly, that there's just a lot of industries that just simply wouldn't be able to exist. I think the airline industry is probably a good example. I do not think that the airline industry could exist on its own if all the unions were really, truly, fairly paid and there wasn't government support, because they absolutely exploit the heck out of their employees in the airline industry, especially the flight attendants, And even then, they require government bailouts every 10 years, right? So if we got into the liberal dream, which is everybody is fairly paid and everybody is has a living wage, a lot of industries just wouldn't exist. It's not actually a practical goal. Of course, we want everybody to be fairly paid. Maybe that is a practical goal, but like the thing is that like uh, not all labor is equal to a living wage, right? Yeah, personally, when it comes to the American experiment, I think it's pretty impressive to frame a system that tried to avoid simple majority rules or dictatorship qualities. At the very least, one has to appreciate that effort. Most systems are one of those two setups: centralized authoritarian power or majority rules. Well, but here's the thing: is when we're talking about trying to create a better society. Here's my unorthodox opinion, because again it comes back to this thing, like we would like everybody to be fairly paid for their labor, and we would like everybody to have a livable standard of living. I i i really don't like to have to say that it's probably not possible to give everybody a living wage right now. We would probably need more technological advancements to get our society to that point. It's a good goal, but we're not there yet, right? I gotta be careful about what I say, because I can definitely see somebody trying, a leftist trying to like twist what I'm saying. But um, so when we're looking at trying to make a better society, again, the leftist way of going about it is we need to completely restructure society, essentially, right, to make it better. And the conservative way of doing things is, like small incremental change. Well, here's the thing. I think that a lot of people, when they're talking politics and they're saying we need to improve society, um, they're often talking about like a completely different system. They say that, hey, the American system has this inherent problem, and we just need to completely redo it if we're ever going to get society to where we would like it to be. I do not believe that that's the case. And in fact, I would even argue that you could have a monarchy that could be really successfully done. It's actually possible. It's unlikely to work that way in the long run, but it is possible. And how would you have that? Well, you would have to have a king in place that really knows how to do things and does things right, right? And what is the problem is that number one person isn't going to know always what the right policy is, and number two, there's just too much incentive for him to prioritize himself at the expense of other people, right? So what is the real problem that is really preventing us from creating a better society? Well, we solved the problems with the monarchy, okay? But the real problem is knowing what the right policies are, guys. Knowing what the right policies are. What are the most effective labor laws that allow both for economic growth but also protect workers? We don't actually know. I mean, we have ideas about them, but anybody that says that they got it all figured out, you'd probably be weary of that person, right? So ain't nobody's figured it all out, right? It's the individual policies. What should we be doing? What is our place here in all of this? It's going and looking at empirical evidence, doing the math where we can, uh, doing a lot of thinking and experimentation and so forth to find the most effective policies that can accomplish our goals, and adjusting our goals as we go along, because as we make one change, we're going to realize certain problems and try and fix those, and so on and so forth. You can't tell me that the United States isn't better today than it was 100 years ago. I don't believe that. I think that we've made, maybe there are some spots where we've kind of gone backwards to some extent, but generally overall, I think that the United States continues to progress. And I think that the American system works really, really well. And I think that the American system is actually really, really well suited to the problems of the current day. The only real problem that I see is this push it seems, to try and trash the system and get away with it because the Constitution is inconvenient for us or something like that. But that's not what's holding society back. What's holding society back is really knowing what the optimal policies are that are able to, you know, optimize for all of the goals that we have, which are often contradictory goals, you know? Mhm. Testing, testing. By the way, live action, I was thinking about this the other day because when you were telling me on, what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday, like, oh, why are you still on that trade? And I think that you were concerned about my ES trade, and you maybe didn't realize that not only was it a sim trade, but it was a sim trade that I really wasn't paying attention to and didn't really care about. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, but my initial reaction was to just ignore him. He was full of shit. But then I was like, but wait, live action has been here longer than anybody. He has never let me down. Why? Why didn't I just go? Oh, live. If live action says that, I should close it. Why didn't I do that? I felt really bad about that. I felt really dumb. I was like, wow, I really made a big mistake, and I kind of got away with it because the real position that I had was the $30 that I was making in the treasuries, and yeah, I gave some of it back, but I still made money that day. I was like, wow. And I also think that in part because of that, I became a little bit more risk off because I really started to go in and I started to say, not only is this a situation where I don't have a whole lot of really solid edge because it's geopolitical risk and it's hard for us to really get a hand of the information that would give us an edge there, right? Not only that, but it is just really dangerous to trade this, and I really probably shouldn't be wading into it. Like I should be looking at this situation as similar to the COVID crash that, when we were having limit down days and stuff like that. That is, yeah, you probably could make a ton of money. You could probably buy the dip here or something like that, but it's not worth the risk because the risk is basically you're going to make a ton of money or you're going to blow your account. Yeah, live action has been really good. So I wanted you to know that. We appreciate you having you around. And I appreciate having Caleb around too, by the way. The reason that I get so mad about it is because I feel like um he's when people go astray, and I'm like, I know that they can do better than that, and then we need to sort it out a little bit and come in a bit. It's because, listen, I do it too. I mean, like, I could have been short this whole time, right? I could have just, like, a week ago said, hey, let's just short the S&P 500 and hold it. I could have done that, right? But of course I didn't because I was I was caught up in the fog. I really didn't know. I couldn't say that I was right. I was the only thing I was right about was that I really didn't know what was going on, and I knew that, and so I didn't really take any action, and that was good. But I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I wish that I had known. Oh, I wish that I had just trusted the U.S. intelligence, and when it didn't happen, said, "Well, it's still going to happen. You just need to wait a few days." I wish I had taken that stance because, in retrospect, it seems obvious. You have a background at the NSC. That's good. Well, I do pigeonhole you because I hear I think that some of what might be going on is that I probably what is the word where you kind of put something on something where you were really getting the idea from somewhere else and it really didn't have anything to projecting. I think that some of what I'm saying is projecting what I see people on patriots.win say and projecting it onto you. I like, because here's the thing, I'm really mad about the way that patriots.win has gone. Like, when I go on Reddit right now, it is just all leftist bullshit all the time. And the when I go on the internet, like the propaganda war, listen, the Ukraine is doing a good job with the propaganda war. I say bravo. Do you see this whole thing about go screw yourself? I'm not gonna say, I need to avoid swearing because YouTube, but um there's these guys on Snake Island that got killed and everything. And that was all over Reddit. Like they're winning the internet propaganda war. But the Democrats are also winning the internet propaganda war. Why? Because conservatives are being stupid. There's nobody to push back against it. Well, so what happened was there was the Donald, which was a subreddit, and it basically became like the only popular place for right wing that was safe, because anywhere else you go, the leftists infiltrate and undermine the subreddit essentially. And what was unique about the Donald was they basically said, "Now we're not going to mess with any of those rules. This subreddit is for we support Donald Trump, and anybody that doesn't want to support Donald Trump anymore, then go somewhere else." And so they were quite effective in that respect. And I think that it had a meaningful effect on the 2016 election. And it was probably one of the major factors behind why Donald Trump was successful in that election. Well, when the next election came along, the leftists knew and Reddit knew. And so they basically conspired to eliminate the Donald at some point. And so they really concocted a really unreasonable set of circumstances, in my opinion, that led to the subreddit being banned essentially. And hold on a second. So when they got banned, they went and they made their own website. Seems like a good idea, right? But the problem is that I don't think that they realized that, hey, you know what? Russians are trying to infiltrate and undermine the right. They are trying to take advantage of the right for their own political gains. And the reality is that Reddit was protecting them from it. Reddit was banning the troll accounts for them. So when they created it over at patriots.win, those factors weren't there anymore, and so the Russians and the Nazis like just totally took the place over. So when you go over there, it's that they're like what hyper isolationist, and they were very much pushing that Joe Biden is just doing this to distract us. Ukraine is a distraction, which is just seems like so insane to me now, right? But the reality is that you hold a lot of those same positions, and on the Ukraine issue in particular, I have to say I really feel like that you have fallen for some Russian propaganda in some instances, and I just don't understand why when Russia attacked, I don't see any kind of like readjustment, because that was for me. Remember that day that came in and well, what was it? Was it yesterday? Was that yesterday? It was yesterday. I said, well, we have to make a reality adjustment here because now we know what the reality is, and that kind of changes that should change our view on a wide number of things, you know? That's what I'm not seeing that concerns me. Your sources are Ukrainian? Oh, there you go. Well, I shouldn't say that there's not like problems going on in eastern Ukraine. I'm just saying that that's not why this is happening. This is happening because Putin wants all that territory for himself. He always wanted it, and he was always trying to just engineer the situation so that he could take over Ukraine and install a puppet state. And he's probably going to do the same thing to Moldova. And he would do the same thing to Latvia and all of those other NATO countries. If they weren't a part of NATO, he would be doing the same thing to them. And I'm pretty certain that's the reality at this point. Mm, 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 mm. Well, he would certainly he's not going to. I mean, there's no way that he's going to, but he would if he could. That is what I'm saying. He would if it wasn't such if it wouldn't lead to nuclear annihilation, he would do it. But that's why I'm saying that the Ukrainian situation was preventable. The reason that the Ukrainian situation happened was because the West had decided that it wasn't worth it, right? If they attack Latvia, then it's worth having a nuclear war. But if they attack Ukraine, it's not worth having a nuclear war. And the question that I have at that point is like, okay, why is Ukraine worth it and Latvia is not? Just because Latvia is already a member of NATO? If Ukraine is not worth it, then is Latvia worth it? Why don't you just let them attack a NATO country and let them come through? Oh, well, because if they attacked a NATO country and we didn't respond, then that would give him carte blanche to attack other NATO countries. And at which point I have to say, so why is it ever okay that he's allowed to attack any country? Hmm? If the president had just said from the very beginning, this is not okay if they invade, and if they invade it's going to be a big deal. Well, I mean, I guess he was kind of saying that, but I think that he was saying there'd be military consequences. I think that if the president said that, I don't think Putin would have done it. I don't think Putin would have done it. And now, because you allowed it, everybody that wants to go and take something is going to go and do it, right? Which includes China. Basically, they made the same mistake that they made in World War II. Because wasn't the whole thing that we said we should have said that the instant that Hitler decided to invade another country, there should have been a unified world response against it, and then that would have been the end of it, and you could have avoided the whole thing, right? Seems to me like we're coming into the same situation, that Russia is going to continue to try and take countries. China is going to try and take countries. And at some point, there's going to be a breaking point, and we're going to have a really big war that could have been completely avoided, or at least been minimized significantly, if we had just said from the very beginning that this isn't okay. We almost went to war because we didn't like the Soviets' placements of arms in Cuba, but our putting missiles on the Russian border will do what exactly in preventing war? Okay, so there's a big difference between putting anti-missile defense systems in a place and putting a nuclear weapon in a place, for starters. Maybe Ukraine shouldn't be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Fair. But I don't think that it's fair to say that this situation is the same as that, because I I really do not see a threat to Russian security here, right? Like here's the thing. If Russia put down its arms, there would be no war. If Ukraine put down its arms, there would be no Ukraine, right? Like, it would be one thing if the United States was constantly is sitting around saying, we need to have a regime change. We think that Putin should be killed. We're willing to do anything and everything to change the regime in Russia. Okay. And now we're putting nuclear weapons on their border. We would invade if we thought we could, but we can't, right? Like, that's not what the situation is it? I think China's military is way more powerful than ours. So again, this is not something that I am an expert in, but I've heard a lot of experts talk about this lately, because I really try and keep an eye on China. It really concerns me. And my understanding is that although the Chinese military has made great strides in recent years, as has the Russian military for that matter, they are still not anywhere close to being able to go toe to toe with the West. In fact, they are not in a position to go toe to toe with Taiwan. This suggestion that tomorrow China is going to attack Taiwan is, I think, a little silly. They wouldn't be able to do it yet. Okay, because for one thing, it's a really different thing rolling tanks over a border versus crossing 200 miles of ocean, right? So it would require a significant amount of hardware that just doesn't exist yet for China to take action on Taiwan, right? But again, at this point, it's really hard to see how China doesn't end up doing it, because basically we've basically opened the door and said, okay, go attack them. If you're not gonna give Taiwan a security guarantee, and like, I think that we've been better about that with Taiwan, but I don't think that we have an explicit security guarantee per se. Whether Taiwan has a security guarantee or not depends very heavily on who the president is. And Joe Biden has said that, he's gone short whenever we ask him about it. He comes short of saying that he's going to give Taiwan a security guarantee. But you know what? It kind of sounds a lot like the things that he said during the election about Ukraine. Kind of seems to me that if China decided to do something while Joe Biden was president, and I don't know if by the time China is ready that Joe Biden will be the president anymore. I'm pretty doubtful of that, actually. But if he was president and I was China, I would go for it, because I really don't think Biden would do anything about it. You know? Russia will always have threats on its on border due to their geography. Right, but like, here's the thing. First of all, if Russia had turned into like a real democracy like Ukraine was turning into, instead of this kleptocracy that Putin has created, then it would probably be different. But like, the thing is that even with the kleptocracy that they've had in Russia, the Western world has been very nice to them. Like this is where it kind of gets kind of crazy. And looking back on it now, I kind of feel like, man, we were so stupid about this, because before 2014, and was it the 2014 was the first one when they invaded Georgia, right? We had good relation. We had fairly okay relations with Russia. In the in the early 2000s, I remember thinking, and of course I was a kid and I was naive, but my understanding was, yeah, we're friends with Russia now. They're an ally now. I remember thinking in 2010 that Russia would be a good place to invest money. Right? Like, we were friends with them. And then all of a sudden Putin starts taking over countries citing security guarantees. So like, where do you get off on saying that Russia's existence is under threat from people they're supposed to be allies with, right? It just doesn't pass the smell test. That the reality here is that Putin wants that territory, and he's taking it over as he's using security concerns as an excuse. And quite frankly, I don't even think you need to take it that far. Just listen to the speeches that he's making. Go and listen to that rambling speech that he made when they attacked Ukraine. He's basically all but openly admitting that it doesn't really have anything to do with his security guarantee, and that he wants to recreate the Russian sphere of influence. So every time you try and make this argument that this is the United States' fault because they were going to put missiles there, I'm always going to push back on it, because that's not why this happened. This happened because Putin is batshit crazy. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. The advantage that the US will always have is more naval bases throughout the world, which leads back to, well, I mean, that's where it gets interesting with China because you know, there's a big difference between Russia and China. Okay. This is something that's important to understand. I've been seeing a lot of journalists been bringing this up, but I don't think that it's gotten the widespread airplay, and I do think that it is a critical strategic concept to understand. China and Russia are not the same. Some of their interests might align in to some degree, but the reality is that Russia is a declining power, and the moves that Putin is making are causing Russia to continue to decline in power. And China is an ascending power. China will basically become the largest economy in the world at some point. It's or not the largest economy. They're going to become the most significant player on the global stage. The China is a new sole superpower, and there's probably a point at which um, China is such a strong superpower that even if the United States maintains the power that it has, you won't really be able to call the United States a superpower anymore. It'll be like China will be like a mega power, be like the sole mega power in the world. And China isn't necessarily trying to destroy the world's institutions. They're trying to be more and more involved in them. Essentially, China is trying to usurp the world institutions. They want to take over the International Monetary Fund and all of these UN things, right? Which is a big problem. And so when it comes to military, what are the Chinese doing? They're going into African countries and they're going all over the world and they're building all of these infrastructure projects for people and in return so that they can put their military bases in places. And so if there is ever a military conflict between the United States and China in 20 years from now, it's scary. It's scary because 20 years from now, um, China might be stronger than the United States militarily, yeah. And 20 years from now, I don't see how the disagreements become less, you know? In other words, I think that as time goes on, the probability of a war with China probably increases unless there is a really significant change in, well, for starters, they have to get rid of the guy that's in charge over there in China, right? But as long as he's in, I see real problems on the horizon. This is why another part of why I think that the Ukraine situation makes me so mad is because everybody's saying, well, yeah, but if we do anything, there's going to be a nuclear war. And I'm sitting here like, I would rather have a nuclear war today than 20 years from now. Because if we have a nuclear war today, I think that it's going to be like Russia uses a tactical nuke and then everybody steps in and puts a stop to it. Okay. If we have a nuclear war in 20 years, it's just going to be like a one day the world blows up. Okay. So I would do the hard thing now. Man, when you put off a big battle, it seems to me that it always just comes back and bites you. That's been my experience in life. That's been my experience in life is whenever I try and put something off, whenever I hope that it just goes away, I try and give people the benefit of the doubt. They just take advantage of it and the situation becomes worse. But isn't the IMF very heavily coordinated with and associated with the UN, even if the money is coming from the Treasury? It's kind of considered to some extent a UN institution, or at least adjacent. Americans do not want to work, and we have this cupcake degrees with no real education, rising debt with no education, with more. Oh man, you. Why is it that every once in a while somebody will come in and make a comment that will bring up something else that's going on and makes me want to segue to a different subject? Can I segue to a different subject? Wait, I have to put. You know what? I'm forgetting. I'm forgetting. Today is the last day to do a dog poll. What should we name the dog? Goku has come back up, so we're gonna do Nostradamus, Goku, Cash, and what else was doing? What else was doing well the other day? Oh, Gizmo was actually on there. So I like Gizmo more than Oreo, but actually, we'll put Oreo in place of Nostradamus if that's okay with you guys. There we go. We'll put that up there. Okay, so here's something that's been going on. My stepdaughter is going to be going into junior high. So this week, one of the things that they had to do was junior high registration, right? So in the junior high registration, I think you get 2 electives per semester or something like that. So you have to put in 2 electives and an alternatives, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, wait, what do you have put down there? Let me look. I'm glad I said something, because I was just going to be like, oh, I'm sure that they've got it taken care of and be fine, whatever the deal is, right? No. So I look at the paper. And it was like choir, band, dancing, theater, right? And then I think that there was one science class as one of the alternates. And I was like, oh, no. This is not allowed. Because first of all, why would you do both choir and band? I know that some people do it, but that is just yuck. You don't want to do that. I'm telling you, band is a lot more work, by the way. My stepson is in band. It's a way more work than choir ever was. But yeah. So I said, probably you should get rid of band and you need to pick up a foreign language. You have to have a foreign language, guys. Kids, you need to take a foreign language. If there was no music in the schedule, that would make me mad too. You need to do something musical. You need to learn another language. This will make you smarter. It will teach you learning skills that will give you an advantage over people that don't do it. It does. You got to have a balanced education here. Learn Mandarin. So there is a Mandarin class actually, but it's only for people in the Chinese immersion program. And I don't know how you get into that or how that works. And I'm sitting there like, okay, how do we get Asher into is this something that you have to start in kindergarten or something? Because if I can get Asher to know Mandarin, we're doing it. If I, maybe I should make some money for it, because I am not in the kind of a position where I can say, well, I'd like to do something, but I just can't do it. There's not a single thing in this world that if I was willing to put it ahead of everything else that I couldn't do. But I would like to have a nanny that speaks Mandarin and come and watch him so that my wife can do things. I would love to have it. Oh, pork chop is the alternate, Octavius. Don't worry, it's on there. And of course, when we get the dog tomorrow, we'll look at what he's like and what we think matches him as well, right? Yep, it should be a core essential part of the education system. I think so. I think that more schools should have Mandarin in there. So, but yeah, you have to have a language in there, right? Learn it so you can. Well, I have been learning Mandarin, but I'm not very good at sticking to things, guys. Like it's so hard. Just because I'm ADHD, and if my mom lived with us and I told my mom, okay, I need to study Mandarin every night, she would make sure that happens. My wife, she doesn't remember that kind of stuff either. So it's kind of a problem. There was like this science project that my son was supposed to do, and I was hounding him on it for a while, but then like I kind of lost track of the thing, and I don't think that he ever ended up doing it. Anyways, I'm really concerned about that too. So this kind of plays into this whole thing that's going on, right? Essentially, so I'm thinking back on it, and I'm going, okay, when I was in school, I thought that if I got a C or D, it would be a big deal. I recall situations where I was getting like a B plus, and my mom forced me to go to school and talk to the teacher and do something about it. It was like even a B plus was like a problem in some situations where it was like wasn't like, oh, you getting a B plus is not okay, but it was like you can get a better grade than that and you're going to do everything you can to try and improve it, right? So I understood the importance of these things. My stepchildren do not. I'm not sure what to do about it. I'm not quite sure what is it that my parents did that I don't do, or if it's just has something to do with their personalities or something. So I'm thinking back on this. Well, one of the problems is that my wife was homeschooled. I had to be really frank, and frankly, I was probably a little bit too mean about it. But I was like, look, I don't think you understand what it takes to be successful at this. You know, like if you want your child to be valedictorian, and I don't think that that's the case for these children, but if you wanted that, you wouldn't know how to get them there, and I don't think you understand the importance of it. And that's when I started thinking about these things. Like I work for a big bank, and those of you the guys that have been watching it, you know which one. And the fact that I don't want to say which one probably tells you which one it was. Okay, I'm really lucky that I got to work there. In reality, I'm really lucky that I got to work there. I remember when I went to New York for their 6-week training program, and we hung out a lot with the guys from London. Oh my gosh, it was insane what the people from London had to go through to get those jobs. They went to private schools. They had to go to the most prestigious universities that there were in Europe, and then you had to do the internship, and the internship was really competitive, and then not everybody that did the internship actually got hired, and you had to work really hard in the internship. Like, it was crazy hard for them to get those jobs. I got the job because I happen to be the only person in Utah that really cares enough about these sort of things, and they realized very quickly, oh, he's very interested in it and he has the skills, so we want to pick him up. That's the only reason I ended up at Goldman Sachs. I was basically with all of these, like, working with all of these Ivy League school people. Probably didn't belong to some extent, but it was okay. I could do the work. It was a little stressful sometimes, but and they didn't really need me in the end. At the end, the things that they had put me into that I learned, then they ended up not needing them as much, and so then they just got rid of me. That was really hard. And getting through school was really hard. I remember spending every night in the computer lab working on assignments because every class had a big project at the end of the semester. And then after finishing it, staying behind and helping other people just so that I would have people that I knew and could help me. And I'm glad I did it because they did help me. It was insane. And then I look at my kids and I'm like, they have no clue that that's what it would take. They think that if they just kind of float along, that someday they'll make more money than me. And they don't realize that, like, it was a really long string of fortuitous circumstances that allow me to have the standard of living that I even have. Most people my age, and this came up the other day, didn't it? Right? When we're like, well, you are kind of lucky. Like most people my age, they still live in apartments. I'm sure that a lot of the people listening today they're still in apartments, right? It's just like, and the kids don't understand that at all. And I'm like, how did I never? I didn't teach. How was I? What did I not do? Or was it just because they're my stepkids? They don't listen. I don't know. I don't know what to do about it. It was a really interesting conundrum because now I want to sit down and give them like the big long speech about it. But I don't think that that would really help, would it? Hmm. On the floor, the guys would pick a key level and they would trade off of. Well, so on the key level thing, there's something that I think that gets lost in the translation when I'm talking about all of this stuff because I don't believe that my position is not that there are no key levels. I think that some people take my position as, if technical analysis doesn't matter, then all levels are meaningless. I'm only saying that key levels are not predictive. But you can definitely see a level that matters to people and see it, react to it, and do stuff around it. It's just that you really can't predict what it's going to do there in that situation. But I think that it can be important because if you really do have an edge, then you can really kind of take advantage of those situations, can't you? Like I think the best example is when people are looking at floor pivots, man. They see these floor pivots and they think that floor pivot is a key support level or whatever. And you have the piece of information that tells you that like large meta orders are coming in and selling that day and they're going to just bust through it. And you can just hit into them. It's like taking candy from a baby because they're all 100% confident that it's going to bounce there and it's not going to happen. So I think you should keep track of key levels. Just don't think that they're going to predict what happens. You may be right. Those guys would have a loser ones every 2 weeks. Yes, it's just like the way that I would approach key levels is that there's going to be increased activity. If you've really identified a key level, you're going to see more trading around that area than usual. And the increased trading around that area probably makes it more difficult to predict what's going to happen. So if I am going to take a trade around there, that if I am going to try and make a prediction around there, my prediction should be that it's going to rotate around it a little bit, and then I might want to trade and take a range trade around it. That's what I've been doing in the treasuries. You notice, like when I do those one tickers, it's a lot of the time it's because I'm in those nodes, and I just know that was the edge of the node, and it was giving me an easy fill there, which is usually hard to come by. Have you guys all voted on the? We just got a lot less people watching today. You guys prefer Oreo, huh? You know what? I never started the Share Vision stream. Should have done that. You know what though? I get it. It's a Friday, and we've been talking about a number of things, and probably like when I got done with one subject, people were like, "Oh yeah, okay, well I gotta get this stuff." Joking aside, you do have a good point. Well, of course I have a good point. I mean, well, like here's another thing that I think gets lost in translation. I don't like that it's this way. That was not what my original thinking was. I think that you guys can, if live action is one of the people that have been around long enough in hearing me talk about, you can find these patterns in the market and you just have to be scientifically thorough about it. And I think that one of the things that's kind of worked against us is that I came out in the beginning knowing too much about the statistics and the scientific process. And so what would have tricked a lot of other people into trading it and maybe have given them some short-term wins, I immediately knew the problems with it and never tried them. So I was always just kind of in this back testing and never really liking what I was getting, right? I tried really, really hard to find some technical edges. I tried really, like when I think back about how much time I spent doing that, I probably could have spent on machine learning. I kind of regret that. I could already know the machine learning stuff that I want to know. Could have been working on that for the last 4 years, you know? Uh, um, but but that's kind of why I push this other stuff is because it's like, well, before it was like we don't know everything about the way that the market works, but if we can statistically show that it does a certain thing and make money off of it, then let's do it. But now we've been able to use the statistics about the market to really understand why it does what it does. I think that this understanding about how inelastic markets are, I think really in almost every move that you can see, you'll be able to see its footprint on it. Like what we saw yesterday, they went too far. There's always good the number of orders that it will take, the number of people that want to sell on Ukraine is always going to take price lower than what the fundamentals really suggest should be the price based on what has happened. So of course they went too far. And when they went too far, then what's going to happen? You have all of these shorts that are going to cover. And when all of those shorts cover, that's probably going to take them too high. Although they're still moving up today, right? S&P 500 has been going for about 45 minutes now. It's been tight, but they're still positive. We'll see if they come back next week. It's possible. But either way, you're going to get a bunch of moves here that are just not logical or sensible, frankly. Frankly. And you can, why is this? Because markets are inelastic. Do you like the break and retest strategy? Okay, so I think I know exactly what you're talking about. And um, I actually find that to be a really, really good setup. But again, if I have a larger edge, right? Like if I know why the market is moving up, if I'm getting a strong uptrend, I know why I'm getting a strong uptrend, and I'm pretty confident that we're not even close to the number of orders that are going to have to come through because of that piece of information. Seeing a break and retest, yeah, the retest is a great place to get in. It's a great place to get in. And why is it? Because the liquidity hole, right? You're going to have a move up, and there's this really key level, right? And so there's going to be a ton of volume there. Everybody's going to trade that. Then you break through it, and guess what? Everybody already took positions. So now you've got the liquidity hole that they come back to. And the algorithms that do this kind of Omgren Chris thing, that's exactly the sort of thing that they look for. So it breaks out. You wait 45 minutes, it comes back, and you buy it. Yeah, totally works. If you know that there are orders that are going to take it to there. But if you don't, like, I think that the problem is that, it's just a regular day. It's just a regular day. It comes up there, breaks out, comes back, you buy it, and then it goes there, it comes back, and it just rotates around it all day and goes nowhere, and then it doesn't work, right? So what does that mean? There are some patterns. There are some patterns that happen in the markets for sure, but these patterns are not predictive, right? It's the other way around. It's the other way around. If you have the predictive information, whatever the thing is that's predicting the orders, like a piece of news, for instance, is the easiest example, I can tell you almost exactly what's going to happen. I can tell you almost exactly what's going to happen. It's kind of crazy. And you can even to some extent like predict like what time the legs are going to happen and stuff, but only if you know what's going to happen in the first place. In other words, knowing a meta order is coming in is extremely predictive about what the price action is going to be, but the price action is not very predictive of the future price action, right? If we're coming up to a large level and we break through it, it doesn't tell you that it's going to bounce, that it's going to come back and bounce there, and you can hold it. That alone, that alone is not enough for you to have an edge. You have to really know why, or like how big the meta orders are, or whatever the deal is. Yeah, thank you for stepping by at Live Action. That's one because the Peter Davies and Jigsaw has kind of been pushing that setup. They always mention that one, and when it works, it's a really great one. And again, given certain context, it really works really great. But I think that a lot of people get this idea that okay, so every time I see that, I should try and take it. No, 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 no. Oh, so let's see if we got more information about the Supreme Court nominee, eh? Sounds like Joe Biden's not listening to Joe Manchin's advice. Instead of opting for Judge Michelle Childs for the Supreme Court, who had bipartisan support and Representative James Clyburn's endorsement, Biden will instead pick the early favorite, D.C. Circuit jurist Ketanji Brown Jackson. It's a relatively safe choice, although not the safest choice. Brown Jackson may end up getting no Republican support. She's seen as a hard progressive, and her record will get significant scrutiny in the Senate Judiciary hearings. Brown Jackson only got 53 votes for her confirmation to the D.C. Circuit in June 2021, when only Lindsey Graham, Susan Collins, and Lisa. Well, they're really presenting it differently from what the mainstream news outlet did, aren't they? That's clearly a ceiling on the SCOTUS confirmation vote, but 50 plus Kamala Harris would be the floor, as Manchin has already made it clear he'd support her. Okay. This leak recalculates the PR strategy. Earlier today, Punchbowl and others reported that Biden had made his pick and the announcement would come as early as today. That prompts the question as to whether the White House intends this as a Friday afternoon document dump to avoid too much scrutiny of Brown Jackson. That's what I was saying, but I was saying if it's a big enough news event, actually it's good to put it on Friday so it dominates the next week's headlines, and I think that this one probably will. Or is it distraction to avoid too much scrutiny of Biden's handling of the Ukraine crisis? Well, but is all a pundit wrote this, didn't he? Oh, is that? Okay. One of the ways you can tell if it's all a pundit is because he speculates so much, and it's really quite crazy because he starts to turn his speculations into truth, and it's a little crazy. I'm not a huge fan. Blah 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 blah. But nothing about who she is. Nothing about who she, like what her decisions have been. Nothing on other right-wing choices. Let's go to Reddit. Let's go reddit.com/conservative. I don't see anything about it. We could go and see like the general Reddit version of it, but I would like to know more about the decisions that she's made, but that's okay. All right, so how's our poll doing? Anyways, I was hoping that you guys would maybe have some ideas on how do I make my children understand. Oh, so I didn't finish telling the story there. So one of the things that happened after that was so I made her put Spanish on there. And she was talking to her stepdad about it, and she's like, "What do you think I should do?" And he said, "Well, I think you should do what you want to do." And that gets back to me, and I'm like, "No, don't do what you want to do." That's the traditional American way of thinking about it, but that's wrong. My approach is kind of more like the way that Jewish or Asian parents take on it. Do what you're good at. Do what makes you a lot of money. Don't do what you want to do. because you'll do that anyways in your spare time. So you shouldn't be spending your education and time and energy on something that you want to do anyways, especially if that thing is something that doesn't make money, like music generally, like arts generally speaking, right? You do that on your own. And if you want to be financially successful in life, it's going to involve doing lots of things that you don't really enjoy. That's how you make money, is doing things that other people don't want to do. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know like how uh, this is where I'm not super well, it's the same problem that I have with you guys. Well, it is the same. If it is the same problem, then the solution should probably be the same. And the solution over here on this side, or at least what I've been trying to do, has been getting better at the storytelling and keeping people's attention and editing the videos in a way that grabs people's attention. Although I still deal with the issue, which is that, but as soon as I tell them the thing that they don't want to hear, they tune out. How do you do about that? It seems to me like everywhere I go in my life, the things that end up being like the key friction point, the key thing that like you got to do to go further is something that nobody wants to believe is true. Why is that? Is it that all of the advantages that people um that could possibly be up for grabs that people want to believe have already been taken, and therefore the only way to find the edge is in the things that people don't want to believe in? It must be. That must be why. But if that's the case, how do you deal with it? Well, perhaps my job is not to convince the world. As my job is just to convince a small group of you, and you will go and do your thing, and being successful with it will be proof in and of itself. So I've come back to, a few months ago, I was like, well, I really need, well, at the beginning of the year, even actually, wasn't it? I said, I need to spend more time on the stream, right? I need to put more effort into the YouTube channel. I I did that, and I got the really key content out. Now I need to get the fun content out and see if that grows the channel, right? But then beyond that, I need to start looking more towards probably more towards doing a CTA strategy, right? Swinging. I'm actually, I could swing these micros better. Like why am I not doing what I'm doing in the micros over here in the treasury? Because I could potentially do it, but I've been way more risk adverse about it over here, probably than I should. But I'm not a particular fan of these prices at this exact moment. Or nor the timing. Certainly not the timing. If I was going to do something like this, maybe next week. What is on the news docket for next week, by the way? We do have Chicago PMI on Monday. That's interesting. That is usually not a number on a Monday. ISM manufacturing. Oh, because it's March. Oh, because there's only 28 days in February and it's the 25th. Here I'm thinking there's like going to be a whole another week, but no. So then that means that Friday will be non-farm. Yeah. So I might be able to try. I might be able to try going long rates, especially if maybe there's some declines on it. And we should have a much clearer idea of what the Ukraine situation is. When I went to sleep last night, I was, I thoroughly expected to wake up this morning and find that the Ukrainian president had been murdered. Thoroughly expected that's what the headline was going to be. Could still happen. But it's actually starting to sound like like there was the initial onslaught, and maybe the Russians are going to have to be more aggressive in the next waves. Sounds like they were more aggressive last night. We've been getting reports of gunfire in Kiev. But it sounds like that the Ukrainians are in fact holding up better than anticipated. But so maybe it's not going to be over in 72 hours, but by Monday we should have a good idea about how extended of a conflict it will be, maybe, yeah. Um and that might help us a little bit if we want to try and take a swing long in the 10-year. Of course, the other possibility is that Monday comes along and we'll be right back up at two and above that. And well, we're just gonna. I think that it's worth the risk though, because of the weekend in particular. There's going to be a lot of data next week though. That's another problem. They don't necessarily want to hold it through all of the data, right? Last thing I want to do is take a position, have non-farms be bad, and it go completely the opposite way. Because that yeah, we probably shouldn't take a swing until after the non-farms, because that non-farms is going to be extremely decisive in what the Federal Reserve does. Like if that non-farms next Friday comes out and is better than expected, what are they expecting right now, by the way? 400,000 employment change? Okay, so the expectations are a little bit low. The expectations are a tiny bit low. What have they been? What were they before that? Yeah, that would be 400 would be, it wouldn't be the lowest that it's been. Actually, it's higher than they have been. That's actually higher than they have been. Okay. So if it comes out in line or better than expected on Friday, then that could significantly increase the chances of the 50 basis point hike, right? And then we got inflation after that as well. And I think that the volatility that we've had this past week, this past month, probably doesn't help them too much there on the inflation thing. So, well, we'll just have to see what price they give us on Monday. All right, where are we at on the poll? We're still at eight votes. If you haven't voted in the poll, you should vote, because this is the last time we're doing that. When we come on Monday, I'm gonna have the puppy, and he's already gonna have a name. Don't miss Monday, because there's gonna be a puppy. I'm actually surprised when I put in these that Oreo is performing top. I mean, I like the name Oreo, but it's 3 syllables, and it wasn't doing so well in some of the other polls that we did. So I'm kind of surprised, given that mix, that Oreo is coming out on top. I wish I could do different types of polls where you could pick 2 or something like that, right? That would probably be more useful. Maybe I should have tried setting one up through Google or something. Let's come over to Reddit here and see what kind of headlines we're getting on Ukraine right now. Jeez. I think it may be the case here that Reddit is just like really wants to warmonger on this Ukraine thing, and that it's not actually reflective of the larger public, and I'm falling for it. But just everything that I read seems like people are really upset that this is going the way that it is. Ukraine's foreign minister says Russian troops attacked kindergarten and orphanage. Oh, you know what else? Before I go too deep into that, by the way, what's Bitcoin doing this morning? Still kind of flat. Actually, you know what? Today has been a relatively uneventful trading day. The S&P 500 isn't doing terrible, but the treasuries have been pretty range. They had the big move up. They did have a move up before the S&P 500 opened, but then since then they've been kind of in this. It's a pretty big range. It's actually a 10 tick range. We probably could have tried scalping that. I don't know if I really have an edge through that. The liquidity is not very good. There's only putting up 1500s here. Oh, and you know what else we totally forgot while we were yapping? Sometimes I just do this. University of Michigan's 5-year inflation final expectation 3%. Sentiment's final was 62.8 versus 61.7. So that I totally get why we didn't necessarily have a huge move off of that. It does look like they were kind of waiting for it, and ES did buy after that from 85 to 20. So that's like that's actually deceptively good, right? That's like a 40-point move. That's actually really big. So maybe the University of Michigan survey was important. Let me come back through here onto Twitter, make sure, is there anything here on Twitter? Let's see here. The similarity of Putin with Napoleon is striking. When he came to power, Russia was falling apart. He is associated in Russian minds with the remarkable post-Soviet stability. Then he went beyond Georgia, Ukraine. Then he became really aggressive into grandiose confrontations. And then, what's the whole thread? I don't even know if that was the first tweet. Sanctions, schmanctions. It may be wise to consider the possibility that Putin is only interested in power, not money, in guns, not butter. Increasingly so, he has no personal skin in the economic gain and pays no price. The theory that he has hidden assets stashed away is naive. I agree with him. It seems to me like economic sanctions don't do anything with this guy. He's in it for ideological reasons. Bitfinex's really mad about the people buying Bitcoin because the Russians might try and use it. Okay. Well, there were some interesting things in there that I had missed. Taleb has some interesting and strong opinions on this situation. So where were we before that? Reddit, right? I read some of the dumbest articles. What do you mean by that? I was just reading tweets. That was just Nassim Taleb's opinion on the Ukraine situation. I think he's right about Putin, though. I think that Putin doesn't care about the money. That, like, I have to say that he's willing to do a full-on invasion of Ukraine, I think says a lot about what drives him. I think that he was willing to attack Ukraine says a lot about what's driving him. And I don't think that these excuses that it's a security threat or, that we can use money to dissuade him, I think has been proven to be a naive approach. He has ideological leanings that he thinks that his job is to recreate the Russian sphere of influence. Anyways, there's a lot about them blaming Russia attacking a hospital here. I kind of always ignore those kinds of stories because you always see civilian structures get hurt in conflicts like this. Some guy doubled down on his GameStop investment. Well, that's not going to work very well for you, I don't think. Jeez. Oh my. I'm not going to show you guys that video, but there is a video on Reddit right now of a Russian tank driving down the road, and there is somebody in a car just driving down the road, and the Russian tank swerves to run over the car and smash it. And it just flattens the car and then drives on. That is a war crime, 100%. That is 100% a war crime committed by the Russians there. Wow. And it might be a picture of one of the hospitals Ukraine. Well, there's always collateral damage. That's the thing. I cannot remember a geopolitical conflict where I didn't see images of hospitals that had been hit, right? Like that's always the thing. I guess it's supposed to be a different thing if it's in Gaza because they put all of their stuff in the hospital, and surely that shouldn't be happening in Russia and Ukraine, right? But I've never seen a situation where there wasn't some complaint about a critical civilian infrastructure being hit. And there's always this is we shouldn't make this out to be somehow indicative of the Russian military in general or anything like that, because it's almost always going to be the case as well that in a war that specific individuals do things that they're not supposed that are war crimes essentially. And they often don't go punished. But that one, given the situation and the blatantness of it and the video evidence of it, that one might become a big deal. That one, I think people might pursue that one. That's, See what people on Public Freakout are saying about it. Surprisingly, he survived. Okay, so maybe maybe it won't become a big deal if he lived. That is, I don't know, man. Jeez. Like it really was just like a blatant, oh, let's just kill this guy for shits and giggles. Jeez. Oh, okay. Wait, no. So somebody's saying here that it was a Ukrainian military vehicle and the operator lost control. But that guy's downvoted hard. I'm gonna have to put that in rumor. I have to put that in rumor. I would think that if it really was a Ukrainian vehicle, there'd be a lot more people on that thread saying that that's a Ukrainian tank. But That was a pretty shocking video, to be honest with you. Mm, the treasuries were moving up there, and they're starting to come back a little bit, but I'm wondering if it's going to go again. Now, one has to wonder what the driver is here, because the S&P 500 is doing well. So why did the treasuries come back so dramatically? Did I miss something? I feel like I must have missed something. Is there a Z on the tank? Okay, let's see. I don't think that I have a good enough view of it to see that. Where would the Z be? No, I don't see any markings on the tank. Here, I'll show you. That's the tank. There's the image of the tank. What's that in the back there? Is that identifying? Hmm. Yeah, I don't think that we ever get a view of it from the back. Nope, only from the sides. Only from the sides. I think that you'd be able to tell just from the type of tank it is, though, right? If somebody was a military expert. Yeah, I could link the video. Yeah, let's do that. I hesitate to show it here on YouTube though. It's not that graphic, but I still find it shocking. Better to be safe, right? How are we doing here on our poll? It's Cash and Oreo are leading the way. So here's the problem with here's the conundrum that I have with Oreo. If we name the dog Oreo, what would we call him for short? Because Oreo is 3 syllables. And I need like a 1 or 2 syllable word. You know, like cash, that's 1 syllable, see? Cash is 1 syllable. But Oreo is a much better description of the dog, I think. He looks like a freaking Oreo and he's adorable. He's adorable too, I might add. Well, the treasuries, they came back a little bit, but they're kind of hanging out there at the top, and the 5-year is pushing like they want to keep going. Did I miss a piece of news coming out here? Maybe that's just the role. Yeah, I think you might have a fair point on that one, Caleb. It looks possible that the tank had just lost control of the vehicle because it comes around that corner so fast. It may not actually have been intentional. It looks intentional the first time I watched it, but the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, well, it may actually have been just an accident. Okay, Kremlin says Putin has agreed to organize negotiations with Ukraine's Zelensky. After Zelensky said he was ready to discuss neutrality, i.e., not joining NATO. U.S. pending home sales plunge in January as mortgage rates soar. Okay, maybe that's why. That's a good point. So the move really happened more at 7 o'clock, though. President Xi pushes Putin to negotiate with Ukraine. See, the headlines that I'm coming through here do not seem dovish to me. So why did the market turn so dovish today? Well, Putin's been offering to negotiate, but some of the stipulations that they had were not non-starters, right? Like the dean. So first of all, the Nazi, that the government there is being controlled by Nazis. That's kind of bullshit. But like, um, the stipulations that he was putting was basically like you have to become a puppet state, right? If they can just pledge neutrality, that should be okay, though, right? I don't know. Well, let's see how it goes. No advance of NATO. He had a bunch. There was a lot more than that. Let's see here. Putin. Let's go and research that. Huh? Putin demands. Um, there we go. Here it is. Okay, so yeah, so this is the first one. They include a demand that NATO remove any troops or weapons deployed to countries that entered the alliance after 1997. Not happening, including Poland. Poland, not happening. Oh yes, just allow, leave ourselves completely undefended so that Putin can come in and take over a NATO country before we can do anything about it. So I have to say, at this point, I really am not 100% convinced that being a member of NATO makes you untouchable. I kind of feel like that he might make the calculation that he could go and do something and do it and then try and get away with it. That's not Russia's fault. Well, it's not Russia's fault, but Russia's the one that's saying, well, we're going to attack the country unless you do this. It's like, okay. If that is part of the deal that has, I don't know, if you're just making a deal between Russia and Ukraine, it might be different, right? Might be different. NATO rule out further expansion, including the accession of Ukraine. So here again, like maybe Ukraine can vow to be neutral, but NATO should not, will not, and should not say that we won't expand or add any other countries to the alliance. That's not going to happen. That it does not hold drills without previous agreement from Russia and Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and the Caucasus countries such as Georgia or Central Europe. So here again, they're going to hold military drills in Eastern Europe, and they should, frankly, because Russia is a threat to all of these countries. Russia is an active threat. It seems quite likely that Russia could invade these countries, and they need to hold drills to prepare for it. But these were the demands sent to NATO in the West. That's not what Ukraine says. Well, okay, but I it sounds to me like okay, let me start over. Let me rephrase then. I'm going to bet you that the demands Putin is going to make is basically that Ukraine becomes a puppet state for Russia. That's what I think. That's what I think the negotiations will turn into. It'll be something like Zelensky can't be president anymore, and you know what I mean. Let's just put that one out as one. That would be a not. Would you agree that should be a non-starter? That Zelensky can no longer be president of Ukraine. That should be a non-starter. He has widespread support in Ukraine. You say that's impossible. You don't think that they'll ask for that? Who cares about the Russian politicians? This is Putin's like the whole kit and caboodle over there, as far as I understand. Hmm. Stocks are up as a consequence. As consequences are weak, especially for USA. Energy is down as there's no disruption. Euro USD up after a strong decline. And for rates, a 50 basis point hypo is dead in this context, erased by falling energy prices. Hmm. The Russian. Oh, come on. Come on. You know that they'll vote on that they're going to do whatever Putin says. Of course, they're demanding Zelensky put out. Why would you push out the people who staged the coup? You got to be kidding me, dude. Here's the thing: is I think I continue to see this idea put forth that the current government of Ukraine doesn't really have the support of the people. Now I understand how when you have an election and he got 75% of the electorate, right? That people can be forced to vote a certain way, or they just the people that know they're going to lose just uh don't participate. But from everything that I've seen, this Zelensky guy is actually quite popular there. He is quite popular, and I would say that he's getting even more popular. 60% of Ukrainians think that they should join NATO. Like which is kind of an extreme position. So if 60% of them think that they should join NATO, I'm going to say that um a pretty sizable majority of Ukrainians will be against removing Zelensky from being president. So I would 100% say that that should be a non-starter. And what would that be? That would basically be Russia is only going to allow peace if Ukraine is going to become a dummy government, right? Maybe. Meh. If so they can move to Europe. Come on, dude. Like they have a right to self-determination. Like just come on. If they want to be a country, they should be allowed to be a country. If they want Zelensky to be president, they should be allowed to have Zelensky president. And quite frankly, if they want to join NATO, they should be allowed to join NATO. And Russia should not have any say. It gets no say in the matter. That's not the way that this works. Yeah, I've been arguing with him about it all morning, Miss Margin. You're speaking as someone who has watched too much Russia Today. Now let's hear. Listen, if the people in LPR and DPR really truly want to break off and become their own republics, then what? Let's let that happen. And let's see. I am very skeptical that that is really actually the case. I think that Russia has a very much had a hand in what was going on there in the first place, as trying to use it as a pretext to attack the rest of Ukraine. But if they really truly have like an open vote, that they really want to be Russia, then it's probably better that those two breakaway republics do go and be Russia. I mean, they are majority Russian, is my understanding, that Russia settled Russians in that area for exactly that reason. So Caleb sounds total. I know, right? You're right. So tell us, Miss Margin, do you believe that the people in eastern Ukraine truly want to be their own countries? These two breakaway republics. Do you think that the people of the residents of those locations, that they really truly want to become their own republics, or has it just been manipulated by Russia? That, and question number one. And question number two would be, would the rest of Ukraine be okay with them leaving? Because if that's really how they feel, I'm kind of, I don't understand why you would want them to stay, because they're just kind of a liability at that point, right? No, that's not how that works, Caleb. Okay. There's elections and then there's fair elections, okay? And I don't necessarily trust what's going on when it's Russian and Putin involved. Okay. They pulled that same bullshit in Crimea. It's like they invade first and then they say, "Oh yeah, the people voted that they want to be in Russia." It's like, "Yeah, because you had a gun pointed to their head. You already took over the area. How can you say that anything that anybody says about the situation at that point isn't coerced?" I have to say, by the way, maybe Miss Margin doesn't have the time to comment. Maybe we have to talk about it the other day. Or maybe we have to talk about it on Monday. But I have to say, I'm quite honored that there are people in Ukraine that come in and watch the channel and find it useful. I research a lot about this stuff. I have to say, like, I I sometimes I get really obsessive about the news, and I read so much. But the thing with this sort of thing is that I've never worked for the NSA or the Department of, that's where I'm kind of like, I don't feel like it's super qualified, because I don't have like the real world experience, but I do feel that I am highly informed. I read a lot about it. The point with Donbass is the same as Crimea, right? Or right, she said she was Ukrainian. Well, and that her English wasn't super great, so I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that she's in Ukraine right now. Well, guess what, guys? I gotta get going here. Let's should we put to PCE price index? Is that what do we call this? Oh, we got a Fed speaker going here, by the way. Let me just say PCE price index because that's all I got. Well, we can talk about this on Monday. Might have more to know. Looks like Oreo won the poll, so I'll put that under consideration. And but yeah, I gotta get going now. So I will see you guys on Monday. Stay profitable, friends.